Well, the U.S. is not planning new sanctions against Russia after releasing a list of prominent Russians said to have close ties to President Putin. The Treasury Department revealed the names last night under a law meant to punish Russia for U.S. election meddling. More than 200 officials and wealthy businessmen are named. Elizabeth Palmer's in Moscow outside the Kremlin, where Putin calls the list a hostile step. Elizabeth, good morning.
Good morning. President Putin has now reacted to the list. He says it complicates U.S.-Russia ties, and then he joked that he personally was a little offended not to be on it. Seriously, though, there are a lot of high-powered Russians who are relieved this morning, some of them in the offices in the Kremlin behind me. They thought this list might expose embarrassing details either of their political affiliations or of their vast wealth, but it does neither. It's just really a list of names and job titles. It includes obvious Putin allies like the foreign minister Sergei Lavrov and business heavyweights like Herman Gref, the head of Russia's biggest bank, and Oleg Deripaska, the former business partner of Paul Manafort, President Trump's ex-campaign manager. But there's no singling out of people who are especially close to Putin or especially corrupt. The U.S. Treasury spells out that being on the list does not mean that sanctions will necessarily follow. So the question everybody here is asking is, what exactly is it for? John?
Elizabeth Palmer in Moscow, thanks. You know, the White House says that they don't need to implement sanctions because Moscow is being deterred. But as you know, the CIA director said Moscow is still interfering in American elections. So they're not really being deterred.
Well, what the CIA director also told me is they're not being helpful on North Korea.
Right.
They're not being helpful on a number of other fronts. So
we'll see if Congress now makes the White House follow up on this sanctions bill that was voted for overwhelmingly by members of both parties.